Hoosick Falls is my hometown, and I live in the same house I was brought up in.
I think if you talk about quality of life, you will never find a better place to live.
When I came to Hoosick Falls, I was about 13 years old. I've got to tell you, when I came over that curved bridge, I really thought it was a magical environment right from the get-go. There was an instant love for this community.
When I was born, I lived in West Hoosick, a small hamlet just outside of Hoosick Falls. I went to a one-room schoolhouse when I was in kindergarten, and my father worked on a farm, and then we moved to the village because he ended up working in one of the factories in Hoosick Falls.
The village is alive. It's like a living thing. It grows and changes just like we do.
Back in 1981, I was walking and I met Joe Miller, and he told me he couldn't sell his house. And I said, if you're moving to Miami, it'd be nice to leave your home to the Historical Society. And he thought it was a great idea, and within a week or two, it was all taken care of.
So my first experience was really in high school that I came to the Miller Museum. And to me, it was interesting because I knew the Millers. It was an amazing family who gave this amazing gift of community back to the community.
The museum offers a place where Hoosick Falls can look at Hoosick Falls in the past, look at Hoosick Falls in the present, and have conversations about where Hoosick Falls wants to go in the future.
The Miller Museum is actually a lot of things. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of Hoosick history. It's a lot of family history. It's a central collecting point for the community history. It's a lot of exhibits that are interesting, that are fun to look at. Maybe my favorite room is it's not even a display room, it's the room with the archives in it, with all the histories and the information, and the people that I meet here and the stories that they tell.
I touched a little of the history of Hoosick Falls when I met Grandma Moses. And when I went to visit her, she showed me cards she got from the governor and from the president, and I was surprised that so many people knew her.
Some famous people have been here, other than Grandma Moses, was the Everly Brothers, and also Harriet Hochter, who was a ballet dancer. Yeah, that was a long time ago, but to think that people that were known around the world actually lived here. Yeah.
So if you asked me today what my favorite exhibit is here, it certainly would be the military room that's available. They have several of the different type uniforms that are here. They also have some very unique original pictures. There was awful tragedy here in town. Total of 20 town of Hoosick soldiers were killed in the same engagement in 1918. Seeing the original picture of them all being here just before they shipped out, it's touching to me. Now that you know several of those men in that picture gave their life for the freedoms that we enjoy today.
Today at the museum, I was going through some archives. I came across an old playbill for an opera house that is in a building that I am currently working on with a group called Civicure. Finding that archive was really key in making the connection for me between the past and the future of Hoosick Falls and buildings in Hoosick Falls.
My favorite permanent exhibit here is an extraordinary collection of pictures that were taken inside the Walter Wood plant, probably in the late 19th century. Just as a sort of a fascinating look at what industrial life was like then.
When I think about the Walter A. Wood Company and all the people employed, I realize how important that was here in Hoosick Falls. We have that past. We have that to be proud of. Because the museum is a source for looking back at all that and remembering or teaching people about it, so as we don't forget that.
I also find great connection with looking at photos of people in their businesses. You know, the smiles, the innovation, how hard they looked, the pride that they took in their enterprise, and the risks that they were taking. You know, we are a community, we are a country of innovators, that's what started us, and I think it's completely reflected here in a lot of those photographs.
The role that the Battle of Bennington played in our national history was huge. That's a battle that should be called the Battle of Walloomsac, by the way.
because the battle was fought in Bloomsack, New York, not in Bennington. Bennington was smarter than Hoosick Falls because they took advantage of that. And it's one of the few battles in America that's named after a place where the battle didn't take place.
When I arrived here in the late 90s, we didn't have much of a base of financial support. What I did was develop a sort of a membership program in which we send out newsletters.
Our newsletter is our #1 outreach. And because of the newsletter, we've got so many people interested in history. My feeling is 20 years from now, we have a copy of every newsletter in a binder, and this is going to become the history of Hoosick Falls.
What Phil and Charlie have been very good at doing is they collect pictures and text and put them onto large historical boards and circulate those around the community. This museum owns a sort of a vast collection of stuff, and it's a real challenge to organize it in a way that's accessible to individual people who might be interested in particular aspects of our collection.
The Miller Museum is a wonderful place for genealogy. We have people coming from all over the United States that come to our little town of Hoosick Falls to look up their family tree.
We're kind of blessed to have a facility that has information that you're looking for, especially, the military information, the stuff that I'm dealing on, and a staff that's dedicated to help you out to get your end result.
The Lewis Miller Museum is the resource to go to for anybody who's revitalizing a building or a space, because that's where you go to find out what it was and how you can respect that when you go forward in the future with creating something new in the space.
The Miller Museum is a great place to find out about the people that made this village, and the people who are making the village. It's a great link to the past, and it's going to be our future too.
How do we create some kind of time capsule to move forward? And I think the Miller Museum is the perfect place to do that.
Miller Museum holds materials that are worthy of the attention of historians, not just locally, but historians interested in the development of New England and of the nation. And they deserve to be preserved and promoted and publicized. As we develop more friends and more people who are willing to help us, we get to a point where we can really do bigger things, and that's what I expect to see in the future.
The other necessary component to having the Lewis Miller Museum be here and be as integral to the community is the community needs to make a huge commitment to the museum. The Millers taught us about community. What they chose to do was to take their money and create a space, a hub, a community hub that could benefit generations to come, reconnecting us to our history.
The Miller Museum is a hidden treasure chest, and I urge everyone to come visit it.
Hoosick Falls is a place with both history and promise. The Lewis Miller Museum makes you realize that Hoosick Falls is a pretty cool and pretty important place in the history of New York and the country. And you'll find it all here.
And we can always use more volunteers.